Welcome to the Honest Pursuit podcast, where real conversations meet real life. We're just two friends sharing our journey of faith, struggles, and growth. No filters, no facades, just honest talk. Let's dive in.
Hello and welcome back to the Honest Pursuit. My name's Jose and I'm sitting here with my best friend and co-host LJ.
What's up, y'all?
Today, again, we just did obviously Pastor Tom's episode. So if you listened to that one, I hope that you got a blessed episode on that. But we have another one for you. I'll let LJ kind of take this one as well.
All right. As you guys know, like Jose said, that we had Pastor Thomas Iannucci here, and now we have another Thomas Iannucci here. But this one is his son. Another one.
Or DJ Khaled as well.
Yeah. And,
it's starting to look like him, bro. I gotta lose weight.
Me too, bro. But yeah, man, we have his son, Thomas Iannucci. So he's also a rapper and artist. He's done amazing things. He's from Kauai, Hawaii as well. And we are super blessed to have you on the podcast. You know, your dad has talked a lot about you. I've known your dad now for about 3 years now, since he's been coming out to Okutama. And he speaks super highly of you and just your guys' journey. And that's why, you know, I'm excited to have you on the podcast to be able to discuss that. And me and you have something in common. We're both PKs, and I know we got a lot in common to talk about on that as well. So just thank you again for being here with us.
Thank you so much, guys. And likewise, I really appreciate that. Again, speaks very highly of both you guys and the whole program, you know, I mean, everything that you guys are doing in Okinawa, the men's ministry, the church, just everything for the Lord. Like, I was excited to finally come and meet everybody, you know, and you guys never disappoint, you know. So,
thanks, man.
Yeah. It's a pleasure.
No, thank you. And I think you're also an author.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So that's something interesting.
Yeah.
Can we talk about that real quick? Of course.
Yeah, man. What you want to talk about? I do a little writing.
What inspired that?
Okay. So, you know, believe it or not, like I was into writing before I was ever into rapping or music or anything, but just nobody cared about the writing. So I just went with whatever had traction, you know. And so since like, you know, the music kind of took off a little bit more, I just went with that. But I was always writing, you know, because my dad was a writer, or still is, but he hardly does it already because he's so busy with the church and the pizzeria and everything. But he was pretty extensively published actually in like magazines and journals and that kind of stuff, newspaper articles, that sort of thing, like freelance, but like quite a bit. And then my grandpa, my mom's side, my mom's dad was like a poet and author, you know, and and self-published, but you know, I mean, he would do readings on Kauai and that kind of stuff. And so I think there's always like a literary inspiration in my family. So, and everybody in my family, honestly, like in Hawaii, we all just love to talk and tell stories. Like we call it talking story. We talk story, you know, or vala'au in Hawaiian. And so you're always in the community growing up. Like there's some of my favorite memories from like being really small, like just in the garage at a family party, everybody's circled up like this, just talking story, just telling stories and maybe trying to one up each other and stuff. You know what I mean? Yeah, you know. And so I always love storytelling. And that's actually why I love hip hop. Because it's the best of all kinds of music, is the best for telling stories, right? Sure. But of course, writing a book is the best way to tell a story, right? You get more space and words, you know, you can really, especially like me, just go on and on and on. And so, I was always into both. But writing first, you know, I've tried my first attempt at writing a book in like middle school and it was just like a Lord of the Rings or Aragon ripoff or something like that, you know, and a lot of ripoffs. I never have too many original ideas, but eventually in college, you know, and on, I started getting more serious. And after college, I came back home and a friend of mine, Mason Bunchu, he's a little bit older than me, but he'd also been published a fair bit. And he was the first guy, because, you know, my dad and my grandpa were always like supportive, but kind of like, that's cool, man. Like, go get it, you know? You know what I mean?
You're
like,
on your own.
Yeah, like, not, it was a little bit like, that's great, you know? But Mason was like the first guy to like sit down and really be like, hey, you have potential. Hey, you're not nearly like as good as you think you are, but we can make you as good as you think you are. And like, let's put in the work. And he like really whipped me into shape, man. Like in the best way possible. I love Mason. He's like a big bro to me. But like we really, you know, like with anything, it's all about getting your reps in and practicing and
for sure.
revision in writing. And then, during COVID, you know, suddenly we had all this free time, right? And you know, I don't want to say this in like poor taste or whatever, but like for me, obviously there's like lots of bad stuff going on, but for me it was also like the best time in my life in the sense of like how, regardless of how you feel about how everything went down, the fact remained that we had to, not all of us, if you use essential workers, that kind, but like a lot of us had to just stay home.
Yeah, pause. Yeah.
You just never have, you didn't have a choice, right? And so, sorry, by the way, the pigeon will be slipping in and out. During this.
Oh, it's all good, man. Let it go.
But, you know, we didn't have a choice. And so, but they was paying us. And again, I don't know where the money's coming from, but they were paying us to stay home. Yeah. So for me, it was like, I never gonna get this time again to basically have adult summer break.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
That's true. You're right about
I'm
that.
not gonna do
That's true. It's so true.
And at the time prior to that, I had a lot going on. I was working 2 jobs. My dad had opened the pizzeria, so my family was like all hands on deck. I was also like an English tutor for like Japanese exchange students, and even for like for, you know, in Hawaii, like I said, we talk pidgin, you know, and so a lot of times we get hard time, like students have a hard time writing English, you know, in class and that kind. And so since most of the professors were haole, were white people or from the mainland at the college, I kind of was like the informal translator a lot of times, you know, like, okay, what he's saying is, and so I just kind of like working, because I was doing ESL tutoring. Okay. And so I was also working with the local students. But, you know, I was working 70 hours a week and, you know, and that's kind of what it takes in Hawaii. Like, you know, it's just so expensive. And I was engaged at the time and, you know, going to the gym and trying to do music and writing. And I train a lot of jiu-jitsu and stuff. And like my whole life to that point, you know, I was always the guy who just grumble and be like, if I just had more time, you know, I would get stuff done, right? And then finally, I had all the time in the world. And I was like, I'm not going to be the guy who just complain. And he got the opportunity and then did nothing with it. Yeah. Put up or shut up. Now's the time. So for like the first few weeks, I definitely did nothing. You know, like I was like,
everybody was like,
oh,
this is just 2 weeks.
I was like, whatever. But when I realized like we're in here for like the long haul, it's like, okay. So I just went like crazy, you know, in the best way possible, where like I recorded an album and an EP and a bunch of singles, and I wrote a couple books and a bunch of short stories, and like I just was like, anything that I could do to put my brain to the test, you know, like a sports car, like what can I really do? You know, like
I read this thing up.
I got all the time in the world, baby. Let's go, bro. I wrote like a short novel, it's a novella, so like 100 pages. I wrote one in about 36 hours of just nonstop. You know, but I'll never do that again, because by the end, I had such like an intense tension headache. I was out of commission for the whole weekend. There's like several days it just wouldn't release the pressure, and it was so painful. It was like almost like a migraine, but like for a different area, right? Yeah. It was so bad. I was like, okay, maybe that was too much, but that was crazy. I was like, oh my God, I can do all this kind of crazy stuff that you can't, you know, you got to work and everything. You can't do that. But that's when I really got into writing. And that's where I started the collection of short stories, which is now the book that got me my agent, which is really cool. It was all the way back then. So it's 2020, 2021 time. I just was writing short stories about whatever, about life in Hawaii, about people randomly, whatever. And
that's awesome.
Yeah, you know, and you know, it's a little more experimental, a little more literary kind. And I was talking to my cousin Duke, who's a writing partner of mine, Duke Wellington, and
What
And
an
I was
author
like,
name right there.
I know, right?
dude, right?
That's
No,
not
I know.
like proper English.
That's why.
my goodness.
That's why, bro. Yeah, and so because he's named after our grandpa who's from England, right?
okay.
So his pen name is Duke Philip Wellington. It's the most authorist, writerist English name. I was like,
you can't get
he's
it
born
better.
for this, you know. And so, sure enough, listen to the guy who's born to be a writer because he's the one. Because I just had all these random stories that didn't really have anything in common. I felt. There was about local people. Local people is people in Hawaii. That's us, right? So the non-Hawaiian people in Hawaii. You have transplants who move from the mainland. And you have Kanaka Maoli, which is Hawaiians. That's like indigenous, like native, right? And then you have people like us, which is descended from like plantation workers, you know, over the last 200 years or whatever, right? So my mom's side of the family is Kamaina, which is like the Hawaiian word for like local, so 4 or 5 generations now, whatever, right? So anyway, so it was about like that kind of stuff because I felt like I saw some, but not a whole bunch of my life being reflected in like kind of the Hawaii literary scene. There's so much talent out there, but it tends to reflect certain kinds of lifestyles of generally the people who tend to write that kind are a little more college educated. A lot of them have masters and doctorates. They're a little bit upper middle class. Maybe yeah, you know, just whatever. Like I don't want to get too specific, but there's certain kinds of lifestyles and there's nothing wrong with that. But I definitely grew up, first of all, I never grew up in Honolulu. You know, I lived there for a few years in college, but I was born on Kauai. It's more rural, definitely socioeconomically. So I grew up right next to Section 8 housing, you know, in fact, we still live there. Never made it out. But, you know, my parents loved each other and, you know, they had the Lord. It was still very volatile because there's nothing like just being broke to just make everything stressful and tense all the time. And, you know, so it was always tense, but, you know, we had Jesus, but in that neighborhood, there's all the drug dealers and the police is always down there and you can hear your neighbor beating his wife or whatever. But then if you call the cops, she's going to be like, no. You know what I mean? Like it was just a very, not quite the paradise that you see Hawaii on TV kind of, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I see.
And so even in my music, like that always really bothered me. But it all kind of coalesced during COVID. So at the same time, I'm starting to write these stories, so the book is called People Watching because it's kind of like you just watching the lives of these different people. Right. Thank you. And I got that from Duke because I said, I don't know, I have all these stories, bro. And it's just like you're people watching. There's not anything connected. And he's like, well, just call it people watching. And that's the angle. I was like, oh,
is it chapter by chapter different people?
Yeah, exactly. Each one is a different person. Yeah, right. You know,
that's so cool.
And I was like, okay, I got to give him his cut, you know, if anything happens from it. And so at the same time, I was kind of like writing those kinds of stories. I was also starting to rap more about that in my music because during that time I was in a few, you know, group chats or whatever with a bunch of different musicians and creatives and stuff from mostly on the mainland. But at the time I was heavily involved in like the kind of Christian hip hop scene. Yeah. And they're good friends. Like I have nothing bad to say about them, but we was just kind of talking about the struggle one day in the group chat, you know, and of course the time zone in Hawaii is a little different. So I usually would come later into the day, right? When I wake up and they just talk about the struggle. Times is hard out here, you know, the usual, whatever. Right. And I was going through some stuff cause, you know, my friend had just killed himself and just, you know, just everything. And so this might've been pre-COVID. Yeah. But it was still in that time of my life. You know what I mean? 18, 19, something like that. 2008. Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, so I texted them like saying, yeah, hey, I know exactly how you guys feel. It's super hard out here too. Like struggle is real. And they all started like cranking me. They're all like, no. Hey, bro, you live in Hawaii, man. Like you live in paradise. Well, what's your problem, bro? Is the waves too big? You know, like the sun too good, too bright. You know, it's like your steak's too buttery. You know, whatever. Yeah, and I was like, oh man, and they was like cranking me hard. Like you know, I don't mind roasting, whatever, but like they was like really going in, and I could see it wasn't like malicious or anything like that, but
they just didn't understand.
It was just ignorance, right? Yeah. And I realized like, oh, for us, we're kind of like a joke to you guys. Mm-hmm. Like when you think of Hawaii, you think of just like hula girls and surfers and the beach or whatever. Yeah. And that's pretty much it. And so at first I was like super like, kind of pissed off, but I was like, no, but if they don't know what they don't know. Yeah. And there's who's educating. Obviously, there's like a whole thing about that because Hawaii's so dependent on tourism. We're not incentivized to show that kind of Hawaii. We like you guys come and spend plenty of money, right? And so that doesn't really get reflected. The Hawaii literary scene is definitely better about that. But the Hawaii hip hop scene, it's a tough one. We really show that gritty lifestyle, but it's very insular. You know what I'm saying? So it doesn't cross over very much. Yeah. And once in a while, when it does cross, you get a Hawaii musician like Bruno Mars. Well, what happened? He's gone. Like, he doesn't come back to Hawaii. You know what I mean? Whatever, you made it out. That's all good. But and again, that's why we love someone like Jason Momoa who comes back, or The Rock, and is involved in the community and gives back. And I'm not trying to throw shade at Bruno, but usually if you make it out of Hawaii, you're just like, okay, shoots, I'm out of here. Thanks for everything. I'm out. Now I'm mainstream, right? Yeah, and I don't really have anything to say about Hawaii to advocate or whatever. And that's not to say everybody needs to. I'm not trying to like be on Bruno or anything, but I just felt like we're missing some sort of crossover thing to talk about this. And so I know a lot of great Hawaii rappers rapping about this stuff, but they're just reaching a Hawaii audience. And then I know a few Hawaii artists who have crossed over and they're just doing like pop stuff. And same thing with the writing. It's like, again, they are talking about certain kinds of struggles, like the disenfranchisement of the Hawaiian people and those sorts of things that are very real. But they're from a different socioeconomic situation, right? So they just don't know what they don't know also. Yeah. So again, for me, I'm not saying that I had like this super nuts lifestyle or anything like that. Like, not at all. I was very privileged and blessed. I always had food on the table. My parents loved Jesus and each other, even if, things got, heated or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. So that alone puts me ahead of so many people. Yeah. So I'm not trying to be like, the struggle, but I definitely seen some stuff that I didn't really feel like I was seeing represented in the books about Hawaii I was reading, or the movies and TV shows about Hawaii that I would see out there. And so I was like, I felt like the Lord was like kind of calling me to like, okay, well, educate. Like if you see an issue, then you should say something. But for me, the big struggle for a long time was I was just super angry, and I think in this, and that's like a whole other thing about like angry young men in general, I think, like I never even know I was angry till I was like deep into my 20s, but just angry all the time. And local men in particular, we have a big problem with that, I think. We don't know how to talk about stuff. And I think that's just like a young thing in general. Just
men, in general. Yeah.
But in any case, also the algorithm just incentivizes you.
That's a fact.
For sure. And so at first I was just like getting it off my chest, like, I mean, there's like, we're humans, so you get mad at stuff and there can be a righteous anger. But at the same time, I started to realize it's just like ruining my life. I was just mad all the time, even more, because instead of like a healthy dialogue, you're preaching to your own choir because you attract followers who follow you on TikTok or Instagram or whatever you go viral on. And they're like, yeah, tell them. Then you get guys who are never going to agree with you anyway, coming into your comments and trolling you and debating you, whatever. And you just burning time.
You just keep feeding the system.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? But it gets clicks and stuff.
Yeah.
And eventually I was kind of like, okay, I need to recalibrate a little bit. I believe that the Lord called me, but he's not calling me to anger. Yep. These ugly feelings that I have inside, that's not of the Lord, right? So, okay. Well, you know what I mean? Like I had to kind of like recalibrate. And I still struggle with that. Like, let me be very clear. Like, I'm not like, oh yeah, and I'm all super, everything's like really good all the time, but as I've kind of grown more in the Lord for various reasons that I'm sure we'll get into later. It's just learning to kind of like a lot of times what we assume is bad intention is just ignorance, and so I'm like, okay, if you never mean to do this thing that I find very offensive, that's very different than if you're doing this to piss me off or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how much people come to Hawaii and all the stereotypes they have of us and all these things, you know, and again, you guys know how it is, you know, it's like, and like, you guys ever watch 50 First Dates? It's kind of a
Yeah.
Drew Barrymore.
I love that movie.
I love the
Yeah.
movie. It's very popular in Hawaii.
Yeah.
But so, and again, this kind of goes back to the writing thing as well as just, you know, everything. And why I'm here at this men's retreat, you know, so I began to realize that there's no positive representation of a local man in like mass media about Hawaii. And so, because local people, Hawaiians get stereotyped, local people get erased, right? So Hawaiians, it's all the hula skirts or King Kamehameha or whatever, right? And local people, most people don't even know we exist, even though we're the majority of people in Hawaii. They think we are Hawaiian, and we always have to explain the difference and that sort of thing. But what's his name, Kula or whatever, Rob Schneider, right? That's the most well-known representation of a local man.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? You know, and he's got the one hamajang eye and he's talking pidgin. Pidgin. You sound more Mexican, if anything, you know, like, I don't know what. And I'm pretty sure he even said like, that he didn't bother to learn any pidgin or anything like that. Wow. Like, if I'm not mistaken. And so it's like, that's who young local boys get to look up to. You know what I mean? Like that. Yeah. And that's what, when you guys come, that's what you think of. If you even know you exist at all, that's what you see. You know? And it's like, and again, like, hey, we have a good sense of humor. We love to laugh at ourselves. Like, you know, in the right context with the bradas or whatever, we crack up. But that's different when I start thinking about like how other people see us and that kind. And so like, again, like I was just thinking like, what is it for a local man to get out of Hawaii, right? It's like, well, you're like a MMA fighter, BJ Penn or Max Holloway or one of those guys, right? Or exactly, you know? Or you're a football player or something like that, baseball, something, you know, like an athlete maybe.
Yeah.
But while we do have lots of really smart guys who go on to great careers, they're lawyers and doctors, that kind of stuff, it's never represented or shown or talked about or anything like that. And just all these things was just like in my mind, you know, and I was like, that's pretty heavy. So we need more representation. And so I was like, well, what can I do in my own small, because God's blessed me with a little bit of a platform, you know, relatively speaking. What can I do in my way? And so there's a few things. And so one of them is just to be a voice for my people as much as one person can, because of course we're also different. You can ask someone else and they're going to have a totally different opinion than me. That's fine. But in Hawaii, we, because we have such a strong Asian influence in our culture, we're super ashamed to ever talk about anything at all.
Yeah.
And so we don't really have these kinds of calm conversations that much, although that's starting to change. But we just kind of hold it until we just snap, you know. And I was like, but then it's not like a productive, when you're mad all the time and you just blow up, what's actually getting accomplished? Not that much. So I was like, okay, well, if I can kind of unpack some of this and work through some of this and just talk about it and not go to Howle's or whoever on the mainland or whatever, and like point finger all the time, but just be like, hey, actually, it's not that way. Or what you just did is actually pretty offensive to us. Or, and just trying to educate. Sometimes they still just throw it in your face or whatever, you know, it's well, whatever. But a lot of times people are very happy to learn and want to be educated and that sort of thing. And so that's really become, you know, for my music, for my writing, and just to kind of, again, represent like I see a lot of the writing is so great. I don't see a lot of like the young working class male, being represented in local literature. Like I always say, I write for local boys, and everyone says local boys don't read. Oh. You know, and I'm like, dang, man, that's kind of true. But you know, but maybe they would if they felt, you know. And that's the other thing too is I started to write plenty in pidgin. Yeah. You know,
that's cool.
Yeah, you know, and there's that. I'm certainly not the first person to do that at all, but it's a lot less prevalent than you might expect.
Gotcha.
There's such a stigma. I think it came from the plantations, this language, and you had all these different workers. You had obviously Hawaiians and white people, but also Chinese, Japanese, Puerto Ricans, Portuguese, Filipinos, Koreans, you know, and they never have a common language. So they kind of came
put them all together.
Yeah, you know, and but because of that, it was always kind of like looked down on, and if you could code switch, it was always better.
Yeah.
If you could only talk pidgin, like I got brothers who can only like talk pidgin, you know, and that's always like kind of like a shame, kind of an embarrassing thing. Culturally, you're considered ignorant or whatever. But some of the smartest guys I know and girls I know is, you know, they can only speak pidgin, but they're very sharp. They just never had the opportunity or whatever, and you know, I mean, whatever. And so. Oftentimes people who would write in pidgin only got published locally, right? Because it is a little more difficult to read, and mainland publishers never like touched that. I had one agent who turned me down, and he was super cool. But he's like, look, I'm gonna be honest with you, I represented a Hawaii author before who wrote some pidgin, just in like the dialogue, not even like the whole story in pidgin, but just like the dialogue part
in there.
The New York publishers didn't want to touch it.
Oh, wow.
And he's like, so I just can't. I think it's really great what you're doing. I wish you the best of luck. I can't. It's just not worth, you know, the hassle. But I did find I found a couple agents who made offers, and I signed with my agent, Ryan Harbage of Fisher Harbage, and he was very excited by the idea of pidgin. Hawaii's kind of having a moment literarily where there's a lot more crossover. Megan Kakimoto was like a USA Today bestseller, and a couple of New York Times bestsellers and those sorts of things where there's more interest in that. And they have a little bit of pidgin, like in the dialogue and that sort of stuff. But I write a lot in regular English, but then I write some stories totally in pidgin, which is somewhat unusual. But we feel pretty confident that now is kind of the time, you know, to cross that over, which would be amazing. Cool. Again, like, to get rid of some of that stigma and shame, you know, and that's kind of my whole thing, is that I feel like, and that's what we've been kind of talking about, this whole men's retreat is like, I think it's very common. Well, there's nothing new under the sun, right?
Facts.
And it's very common, I think, to young men of all cultures and stuff, especially like minorities, you know what I mean? Where we have a lot of shame from not being whatever is considered to be the norm or whatever, you know, right? And so that representation matters.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? And so
yeah.
it's not like, I understand that some people are like, they made Snape in black and Harry Potter or whatever, you know, it's like, but it's like, obviously don't be lazy and we don't like tokenism and stuff, but representation is important for this kind of thing, you know, and
I was even about your culture and your,
you know what I mean? Like we want to, it's nothing like, it's not some, I don't know, big agenda to whatever. Like, it's just, you know, and so that's my little long spiel of kind of the heart behind my sort of stuff. But I think it's applicable to a lot of this men's retreat stuff, you know, like the shame that men we deal with, like whatever it is. And if we just can talk about it instead of getting mad, like I feel like that, you know what I'm saying? Like that alone would fix so much.
That's the whole goal here. I mean, that's what we do here is we talk about things that, like one of our episodes that was well received was pornography. Like how, like what does that do to men? Like,
don't even get me started.
Those are the things that like I think matter sometimes when you can have a conversation. I mean, our last episode was something that sparked that again, was like, why can't people just have a conversation rather than, you know, judgment over who performs at a halftime show, you know? It's like, you know, but those are the things that I think matter the most. And I think it's really cool to see your backpack of like so many different things and how the Lord is using that to help you in your career with like the writing helps the hip hop and the hip hop helps the writing. And I'm sure it all ministers to you being a pastor, which I'm sure.
Okay. Let me clarify about that. So I'm not a pastor.
Okay.
I seen on the thing, they listed me as a pastor, but I was like, that's not true. I'm like LJ. I'm in the you know what I mean.
Both of you on the routes, I guess.
So I definitely feel you on that.
You know, even to that say, like you guys are talking about how we're here at the men's retreat. So for you guys listening, we are at the men's retreat right now, and the theme of our retreat is entrusted. And just listening to you talk and you wanting to represent the Hawaiian culture that people don't normally see, you know, I feel like God has entrusted you in that, right? Because like you said, it's been rejected and people haven't received it well in the past, but now you have an avenue where you're going to be able to tell your story, whether it's musically or written. And now you have an agent and you're an author now. So now you're entrusted to be able to tell your people's story. And I think that's awesome. And it's just kind of going, this whole weekend, like we are entrusted with the gospel and things like that. And, I know you're going to do great work for the Lord and for your people, bro, and things like that. And so definitely wishing you the best of luck on all that. That's awesome, man.
Thank you so much, man. I really appreciate that. Don't want to be that guy. I will say, I'm not Hawaiian.
Okay.
Right?
So,
yeah. I'm local.
Yes.
Kama'aina is another good word.
You were born and raised.
But born and raised in Hawaii. So totally very common mistake. If you kept from California, you're Californian, right? You're from New York, New Yorker. But in Hawaii in particular, and I want to make sure, because I would be an ally to Hawaiians and not like be a culture vulture or whatever,
So what would you say? Because obviously your dad, everybody who listened to the previous episode knows your dad's Italian.
Yes.
And your mom's Filipino.
Yes.
And
so she's Filipino English.
English.
So actually, like, I'm super mixed. Like everybody in Hawaii, we're all very mixed. So I got English, Irish, Scottish, right?
Hawaiians would be considered like Tainos, what we consider in Puerto Rico.
Yes, that's exactly right.
You got Puerto Ricans who are locals. Right?
That's exactly right.
That's the difference.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So I got like Filipino, Chinese, Spanish, as well as Italian and English and Irish, Scottish, and whatever.
Gotcha.
But that's a super good.
Puerto Ricans, you have a mixture of Africans, Spain, backgrounds, descents, but then you have really the Tainos who are like the Native American, tribe,
the indigenous
was
kind.
indigenous type of.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. So that's a super. So yeah. There you go. The fun educational factor.
Yeah. For the episode, I want to continue really with what we ended really with Pastor Tom, which was, you guys had a moment, right, in your guys' life where he was really divulging probably into the ministry and was not necessarily being to your words and his words, a good father. Tell us a little about that.
And before you, I have one thing I want to add to that question too, because just coming from a PK's perspective, because Pastor Tom did talk about that towards the end of the episode, and obviously heard what he said during the panel. But also, as his son and being a PK, did you ever feel the pressure to perform because of who you are and who your dad was?
Of course, bro. Come on, man. Like, come on. He just set me up for all you guys listening. We already know. Is water wet, bro? Come on. That's a
what kind of question?
But it's true. Yeah, of course. So I will say, so my relationship with my dad is very good, and it was great when we was young, and it's great now. But there definitely was a time where it was super tough. So, and I don't want to like air his business out or whatever, but like, just like being transparent. My dad came from a very volatile household growing up. Like, it was pretty rough. My grandpa was Italian American and like really like, not to be stereotypical, but like, unfortunately there's a lot of negative stereotypes about, especially back then, the Italian, the Godfather in the 70s, that kind of stuff. Yeah. Not the mafia part, but just like, again, just kind of like what we're talking about now, to be honest. It's like okay. So there's this book, right, that my aunt sent me. It's called It Didn't Start With You. And it's just like so mind blowing. And unfortunately I didn't finish it. I need to finish it, but like I read enough. And even just the title, you know what I'm saying? Like, it didn't start with you. Like, you got to unpack all this, right? So to go back, it really, I was so hard on my dad for such a long time. Yeah, for better or for worse, because I mean, he by his own admission, he could be pretty tough. But it wasn't until like, I got divorced and stuff. Just even when I got married, everything, like, I was just a terrible husband. I was just angry all the time, like, and stuff that Pastor Lito was saying. Yeah. So it's about like, man, why are we treating the people we love the worst?
The worst, yeah.
But performing, pretending, right? So I'm out and about, I'm Mr. Rapper and pastor's son and whatever, writer. So I'm out in the community and, hey, what's up, man, Mr. Aloha, and shaking hands all day. I might not even like you.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But like, I'm gonna be like super on and whatever. And then I come home and my wife, or ex-wife now by the time, right? It's like, she just want to talk. And I'll be all pissed off or whatever. Like, I just need time. You know what I mean? Like, just leave me alone for a while. You can't communicate that in a calm, rational kind of way, all that kind of stuff. Like I said, I didn't realize till I was well into my 20s that I was angry all the time. Always, pretty much, you know, and I didn't even really have words or like, I never have the vocabulary to articulate what I was feeling. If you don't have the words, then how can you even know what you feel if you can't put a name to it?
Yeah.
And I never have anyone to show me because my dad certainly never know, you know? And so that kind of like got me on I had to really reflect. Like I said, my ex-wife, she obviously had her issues, but she was a great wife. You know, everything else aside, she did her best. And I unfortunately cannot say that I did my best. It wasn't anything super crazy, you know, but I just was just very self-focused. I was trying to be a rapper and a writer, man. And I came first and God came second. You know, he came first, quote unquote, you know, but he was like a distant last, and so was she. I never made decisions for us. I made decisions for me. And eventually, you know, she had enough and I can't blame her.
Yeah.
But so in that time where I was just at my lowest, right? I was always like a victim mentality, which is so strange because my parents did not baby us growing up. But I don't know. How much time do we have?
Hey,
because like
as much time as you're willing to give us.
Because like we could just go so deep, man. But so okay, there's so many things. So I'll put a pin in my dad, but I just need to explain like because there's so many levels or layers or whatever. You know what I mean? You have to go like all the way down. And Pastor Lito was like preaching today. So you talk about porn, bro. So this is where like so. We would just bear with me, but we would go back. So I first got like exposed to porn, like so many of us at a very young age, right? You know, elementary school, whatever.
Same.
Yeah, you know, we were that generation where it started to become a lot more available than like when our parents were young and that sort of stuff. And by the time, and then, you know, and too, like my parents, you know, I don't know if it's like a Hawaii thing. I don't know. They just never have education. They never struggle with that. You know, it was not so prevalent in their time as it is now. They never have education on it. Obviously, it was wrong, but they never like sat me down because they never understand, right? So I knew it was wrong, but you're like 12, 11, you know what I mean? You don't, I don't know.
You're exploring.
Yeah.
Just...
And so all my friends was not Christian at school, right? And they all watch porn and masturbate and all that kind of stuff, right? And they would all tell me that I was the weird one for not doing that. And at first I was like, that's ridiculous, right? You guys are weird. And I was right. But peer pressure and you know, and like, oh, bro, watch this, you know, like they just ambush you, you know what I mean? On the iPod Touch or whatever. And that's taking it back, by the way, iPod Touch.
I remember that. I remember those.
But, you know, so then, you know, and just unsupervised internet access and stuff. And by the time my parents caught me in middle school, they sat me down and was like, hey, this is dangerous, super bad. Too late. That's too late. Already too late. Like, what?
I'm deep in the waters. Yeah.
Bro, it's over. It's done. Yeah. First of all, as we know now, which I don't know that they knew at the time. Again, so I want to make clear, I'm not blaming them. They were not equipped.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Like, I know exactly what you mean.
A wolf had entered the sheep's pen.
Yep.
You know, but they thought that I had just cracked the door open. It was too late already. And so the same, when studies show that when men watch pornography, right, the same dopamine receptors light up in the brain as when you're doing drugs.
Yeah.
So it's an addiction.
Yeah.
We also see that children are much more susceptible to addictive substances, right? And just technology. Like this is why we're realizing it's actually pretty dangerous to give a kid an iPad because they just lock in.
And then you also raise the baseline of that dopamine so that the feeling, you have to increase the amount of content you're taking. Yeah.
Every time. Right.
Yeah.
So now I'm like, and I don't know all this either. I just know that
we're young. We don't.
Yeah, you're young.
I'm like, frontal, what is it?
Prefrontal cortex not developed.
Yeah.
I'm 11 or 12 at the most. You know what I'm saying? I don't know anything about that. I just know I like this thing, but I think it's a sin, and so I feel a lot of shame. So outside of the Bible, the best book I ever read is At the Altar of Sexual Idolatry. I think by Steve Gallagher. He runs, is it Pure Life Ministries or something like that? But they help like sex addicts, you know, in recovery. It's like a rehab sort of thing. And so it's kind of hardcore, like maybe bigger than with the average porn user. Yeah, like they go like for guys who are like really addicted. But the whole thing about that, they just explain how it works, right? And then so it's like, so but particularly as a Christian, because we know that it's wrong, but we're addicted. You now have a secret you have to hide. And that changes everything. Because now you have this thing that you're ashamed of, you don't want anyone to know. So because of that, you have something to hide, you become touchy. You don't want people to kind of question you on anything. You're very defensive because you have something to hide. And it starts to become an attitude and a behavior for everything. So nobody can tell you nothing about anything, right? So
I never knew that. Wow.
Bro,
I mean, I knew that, but I never thought of that.
He put it in such good words, right? Yeah. So all of a sudden, nobody can ask you stuff. Like, yo, what's up, LJ? How you doing? I'm good, bro. Like, you sure you seem a little tired?
Why you?
Bro, what you care, man? Like, hey, man, what are you, my mom? Like, you know, it's like, because you were up all night watching porn or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like, or,
that's what you're saying in your mind.
Yeah, but so I don't want you to, you know,
getting too deep.
Yeah. So, hey, back off, bro. Step back, you know? And so, and I'm just like, dang.
Say what's up.
Yeah, you know, it's just,
how you doing?
Yeah. LJ is kind of intense, you know? And so, you know, whatever, right? But you start to build your life in such a way that you never are questioned, right? Because the secret that you have to hide. And this is true of any addiction, by the way, not just pornography, but so nobody can question you on anything. So your whole life starts to revolve around protecting this thing. And then it just kind of it revolves around your pleasure, right? Because porn is a perversion of sex. Sex is supposed to be mutually beneficial. Porn, by definition, is only for self. Yeah. And it dehumanizes
the emotion, the feeling,
you know, and all that kind of stuff. And so it's all about your pleasure, right? And no real life woman is going to be able to measure up to the stuff that you see in the videos. So they're always going to be kind of disappointing. So you know, ideally with your wife but even, you know, you hook up with a girl, whatever, and it is not like the movie's not like the video, you know what I mean? It's disappointing. And that for a woman is like soul crushing, devastating, right? So all these things, you know, I battled with porn from middle school until honestly, like God set me free like last year, you know. Now, with that said, the last few years, it was very like, it was the last gasp. So like occasionally, like, you know, stumble here and there, you know, and, but still it would be like, okay, I went several weeks, you know, or months or whatever. And then, but I couldn't, you know what I'm saying? Like I couldn't be totally free, but God just set me free one day. Like he just, boom, done. I never had anything like that in my life. It just fell away.
Yeah, the same.
I know exactly what you mean.
That's kind of what it takes, you know, and that
was alcohol for me too. It was just like that, like
it's when God sometimes
surrendering, really is.
You have to surrender. And sometimes he takes it right away. And sometimes you gotta,
it's a slow burn.
Right. It's what James said, right? He says, you know, you have not yet resisted sin to the point of blood. You know, and so for me, I was like, oh, come on, Lord. I put the blocker on my phone, you know, like, what more do you want? You know, like, and he's like, bro, hey, I need, you know, like, you gotta, I think it's Pastor John Corson says, right? He's like, you cannot change your heart, but you can change your mind. God can change your heart, but he won't change your mind. Wow. But if you change your mind, God will change your heart. But you got to be about it. You know, and as my friend who was new to the faith and was still struggling with drugs, and he'd had a relapse, and I was kind of, you know, talking to him about it, and he ministered to me, and he's like, I'm really discouraged, but honestly, bro, I realized something, that as I just focus on loving Jesus, all these things will fall away. And that, boom, had just like changed something in me, and I stopped trying to fight the symptoms. You know, I was like, oh, you know, can't watch that that movie or this, and it's like, just focus on Jesus. And it just starts to fall away. And obviously I have all my other gluttony, bro. I've been pigging out while I've been in Okinawa and stuff, but pride, arrogance, temper, but it just shifted something. And if we focus on him, all these things start to fall away, right? But so, that was a relatively recent revelation. So instead, you have this whole life where I was fighting it. There'd be times where I do good and times where I was doing bad, but it was an ongoing struggle for the next 20 years of my life, right? That's nuts. There's more time where I was addicted to porn in my life than where I wasn't, just in my sheer existence of life, right? And I never get, I got caught a couple times, whatever, but for the most part, like there's my parents and nobody else really. Maybe I'd once in a while, I'd tell somebody like, oh, you pray for me, bro, but not like really get into it. And I thought that I really escaped it, but the Bible is so clear. Be sure of this: your sin will not find you, or your sin will find you out. Yeah. There's no such thing as a free lunch, man. Yeah. And so when I got married, it wasn't even just the porn by that point. It was a lifestyle of constant selfishness, just everything and every. So even the slightest inconvenience was a big problem for me, right? Because I have a life built on pleasure, right? Because it had spent years of self-pleasure, right? And I think that's so much of our culture that rewards that sort of thing these days.
It promotes it as well.
Promotes it for sure. And so I had all these things in me that I had to unpack post-divorce. I was just going through it, I think, was it you or Pastor Rick was telling about, so Pastor Jason's the other pastor who came, right? And he owns a construction company. He's more painting, but he had just gotten into sandblasting at that time. And so I just went to him because construction, they're always hiring. And I told him, I need your worst, most brutalist, miserable job because I need to work through some things. Yeah. And my job at the college at the time, tutoring English, is just not cutting it. And he's like, brother, I got the job for you. And so I'm shoveling 100-pound buckets of sand and just blasting like sand from like a fire hose, and just 10-hour days, 4 hours a day commuting. So it was like 14-hour days. It was just rough. But in that time, I really was spending a lot of time with the Lord, and this is where a lot of these things started to go with me, right? So I was unpacking a lot of that. Also, it goes back to that it didn't start with you thing, that my dad's sister sent me that book. And I was like, oh my gosh. So basically the idea is that like the things that I'm dealing with, right? The anger, and I don't mean this in a sense of to take personal responsibility off myself, because that's the human nature, temptation. That's our culture. It's always somebody else's fault. Yeah. But you do have to know what you're up against. There's such a thing as a generational curse. It's generational trauma. You know what I'm saying?
I think I've read this, like not this book in particular, but I've read some of it where I think it talks about like, it puts you in your dad's shoes, and then you're like, would you blame him or would you blame his dad?
Yes.
And it's like, no, his dad. So it's like, so he's okay. And then you kind of unpack it in that way.
That's exactly right. Yeah. So think about this, right? So I realize I'm a selfish jerk, and that's on me, but I'm angry all the time. Why am I angry all the time? Well, it's a defense mechanism a lot of times, because actually I'm afraid more often than not. I'm scared, but it's not a good, the masculine emotions you're allowed to show as a man is anger and like happiness, but even not too much happiness. That's like weird. You know what I mean? Like, that guy's all smiling. He might be,
What's wrong with that guy?
Yeah. I don't know, But if you're mad, you crash out. It's like, oh,
he's a man.
That's pretty badass. Like whatever. And it's so messed up, and especially in Hawaii again with that Asian culture. Like you don't talk about stuff. It's so shame. Actually, it drives my dad nuts because he does talk about stuff all the time. He's like, I'm from New York, bro. But so he would have it's a hard time sometimes in Hawaii, but for us growing up, we have an expression in Hawaii that I think they also say in Japan. I think we got it from them, but they tell you it's like the nail that sticks up gets hammered down, right? You're not supposed to stand out. That's super shame. Why are you being like that? Why are you making waves? You're making things harder for everyone else. You know what I mean? Just go with the flow. So, we really don't want to talk about it, but talking about it helps, right? That's why we do these sorts of things. But just like trying to like get a feel for. So I started to talk to a few people, right? And my aunt was one of them, and she opened up some stuff about me about like, hey, it was pretty tough growing up in our house. You know what I'm saying? And she sent me that book. And it's true. So we were growing up, my dad was a pastor, and he was he put food on the table. Mm-hmm. He was always grinding. Mm-hmm. It is so expensive in Hawaii. Mm-hmm. As Hawaii is the most expensive state per capita in the nation. Mm-hmm. There are a few places in like New York and LA that like individually counties or whatever, but like overall, it's like, you know, $10 for a gallon of milk. You know what I mean? Yeah, it's like ridiculous. Like,
that's crazy.
Like, and so, you know, there's a lot of stress. And as you know, if you're doing it right, you don't make a lot of money being a pastor. You know, you can go the whole other way and you can really hustle, you know, but if you're really doing it right, generally speaking, you don't make much money as a pastor. And so times was hard, especially after he quit. He felt the Lord was calling him to go full-time ministry. So he quit his job managing Sears and was in full-time ministry. My mom wasn't working at the time to raise the kids. So it was tight, you know, a lot of shoyu and rice, a couple of ketchup sandwich kind of, you know what I'm saying? You know, and so that's a lot of stress. Mm-hmm. That's a lot of pressure. My dad is from New York. He's from a very volatile, his dad, my grandpa, was very abusive. Mm-hmm. But he got born again, praise Jesus. Mm-hmm. You know, so the last 10 years of their life, they got to really reconcile and stuff. But my grandpa, who I never met, he died shortly after I was born. But he was like a hard ass dude. Like he was a tough man. And like old school Italian, you know, the woman doesn't talk back, you know, and if you step out of line, you can get it with the belt and whatever, you know, for it, come home drunk, just in a bad mood, you look at him wrong, whatever, right? So he was very, very tough. So him and my dad grew up fighting. Me and my dad never fought. It definitely almost got there quite a number of times. But one of us, usually me, was able to de-escalate because I just knew his relationship with his dad and I didn't want that with my dad. Mm-hmm. And later on, he got better as I got older and more angry, and he began to come to senses. He would de-escalate and things had changed. Yeah. But he didn't know about de-escalation. Yeah. He knew, you know, oh man, dad's home and he was drinking again. You know what I'm saying? Like, and so you grew up in that household. You grew up again, you know, no money, fighting in New York, like because guys just would jump you or whatever, you know, and showing emotions, you know, like my dad's dad told him I love you like one time, you know, like when he was 8 after he like really beat him, you know, like too much and he felt bad. Like, and I think, crazy. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? And so now once he got born again, things changed. Right. But until that point, the first however many decades of his life, that's what he was used to. Well, my dad did tell me he loved me, you know, he didn't beat me with a belt, you know, he you know what I'm saying? Like he could say sorry. My grandpa never apologized for anything. Yeah. He didn't beat my mom or us, you know, like in his, dude, what a win, you know, like it's fine. Sure. He would have killed to grow up with a dad like him. Yeah. Right? Well, how did my grandpa grow up? So my grandpa, his dad was a very sweet man, super nice, from Italy, but he died when my grandpa was like 10. Oh. In those times in Little Italy, back in like the 30s or whatever it was, or 40s, and my grandma my great grandma never speak English, right? So they're like fresh off the boat, and they live in that Little Italy in New York, and it was basically like, okay, well, so you're single, and there's Bart over here, and he's single. You both have kids. You guys can get married, and that's the way to take care of widows and whatever, right? So they kind of like community said, you guys get together. Well, Bart was crazy. That guy was like nuts. Like this is the kind like, and you know, I can't remember if the story is exactly right, but something to the effect of like, you know, like either my grandpa or one of his stepbrothers, like Bart knew one of them was like scared of like, the dark or something like that. So you'd like take him downstairs in the basement, tie him up to a chair, put a bucket on his head and just bam, 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 and just leave him down there. That's crazy. I don't know, to pee his pants or whatever. I don't know. Something like that. You'd have to ask my dad. I may be getting some of that wrong, but the point is he was a psycho. Yeah. And so if you think about it, my grandpa compared to his stepdad, would have killed to have a dad like him. You know what I'm saying? He didn't leave my dad in the basement and beat him, or, you know, like with a bucket over his head and play psychological torture games and that kind of stuff. Like, you know, and so all that to say, you have to really unpack a lot. And so when I was able to do that, I was able to have a lot more grace for my dad. It's like, he's doing the best that he can. And he's done a great job. And since we were kind of able to start talking about a lot of this, he's gotten so much better, you know, but it was like all that process just to unpack, just to even get to the point where I could. That's why a lot of the stuff that I write, in my music too, but especially what I write, it unpacks a lot of that kind of stuff, is my love letter to the men of Hawaii, you know, to just young men in general, to my dad, you know, like the first story that I wrote, that really got some traction and got published, at least in Hawaii, is a story called Boy, that, I've done some readings that popped off a little bit on TikTok and Instagram and stuff. And, it's about a young boy getting into an altercation with his dad, and it's called Boy, and then underneath it says a love letter. And a lot of people think the title is Boy, a love letter, but no, it's Boy, and what it is a love letter. Because I'm telling my dad, I understand now. And I'm telling, you know, my brothers who I see them perpetuating the same things to their kids, and I can't tell them that kind of stuff direct, but I can show them, and I can say, I'm not judging you. I get it. I understand now. But also, you need to see yourself.
The perspective.
As I've had to see myself. You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of like my whole heart for like the ministry aspect. And
that's really good. Man, that's awesome. So, like with that, so now it gives me a lot to ponder on and think about as well. Just even with my own relationship with my father and stuff like that. How long did it, you know, take you to? Because obviously it's it's a process, right? Yeah. Just like Pastor Tom said earlier, it's a process. It wasn't overnight. You know that. Like this, and everybody's process is going to be different as well. Like for you two, how long did it take you guys to get to where you're at now? Because I could see the love and respect you guys have for each other, and just the pure joy of being together and stuff like that.
You know, let me see. So it was a process, bro, because I want to say he turned 64 today. So when he was like 50, that was 14 years ago. I would have been. He was in his maybe mid 50s. It was probably the better part of 10 years. Okay. I'd say something like that. That's like somewhere about a decade-ish, something. Yeah. And it was a process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I kind of went through the same thing with my dad. Just coming to find out everything that I've done in my marriage, right, and having to re-heal that.
Yeah.
Going through marriage counseling was the thing that unpacked that for me, and was like, the decisions that you're making now are not, they're way back in your life.
Exactly.
And it started when you were in that room as an 8-year-old, or the relationship that you had with your dad, you know, how you responded to things, or how they punished you. But I had to learn also to have grace for my dad, because they just were in a different time. You know, they didn't. My dad was in Puerto Rico, moved his entire life, left his parents to give me and my sister a better life. Yeah. In the United States, didn't know English, had to learn English, right? Like, we never went hungry. We had a house, you know, we started a mobile home, we went to a house, and he was flipping houses while also working a full-time job. Like, and then he was also in ministry as well, as a men's group, and then later on to foster and start a church as well and grow a new church. But
so you PK as well?
I mean, for the most part, yeah. I think my dad, he did that in later, my teenager years. Oh, I see. And as I was leaving home. But I was always in church with my parents. And looking back, one of my things is like, man, like, I see him being a leader at church, and people look up to him, right? But then it's like, my relationship with my dad sucked. Like, I couldn't talk to my dad. And even to this day, sometimes I feel like we could go past that surface level conversation. Like, I want to talk deeper to you, you know, like, I want to have a deeper relationship. And it's a process, right? Like, because I'm in 2 years of healing myself, right? It's like, well, I'm expecting this to be, done and figured out already. So it's a progress that you have to go in a process, and having grace in that is so important. But I think it speaks to your character of wanting to do that. And I think it speaks to the character of God on how it softens the image that the world portrays on men. Right. Like this idea that we can't be like that. That we have to be a certain masculine man, and we shouldn't talk about our feelings, or we shouldn't cry, or we shouldn't show emotions. Like, I think that's the biggest thing that I've taken away from this whole faith walk and knowing a relationship with Jesus is showing my son that it's okay to show emotions, that it's okay to sit down and have a moment, right? If you need to cry, we can cry together, but it's not a like suppress it, like stop crying, which I was guilty of it.
I'll give you something to cry about.
And I look at it now, and I try to put myself in those shoes, because it's so important. I think it didn't start with you, and I don't want to start it with me.
Yes,
right. Like I look at it in that way. What do I want my son to do for his kid, and how do I want him to live? So that's amazing, man. That's because it takes courage. I think is something that we don't speak as well too.
Oh, thank you, man. It's all Jesus. Like, it's just like, let me be so clear. like it certainly wasn't from me. I had all my trips. I still have my trips, we still get into it, whatever. But it's way better now. It's like so much faster. It calms down. And as my grandpa famously said, who was a cowboy, on my mom's side, you can't have two bulls in the same pen. And so just naturally you're going to kind of conflict. My dad has a very strong personality. I do too, but it's just it's not what it was, and that is all God and having to take personal responsibility. I cannot begin to emphasize how important that is. Like nobody could tell me anything. My ex-wife would always be like, have you, and not in like a super harsh way, but like, you do such and such, and I would just, come down hard. You know what I mean? No, my dad was like that too, right? And we both are sometimes still that way, but it's something that we're working on, being able to accept criticism, and not be so defensive, and not be so lash out. But like, well, this person, what is their intention? Are they just trying to like, take me down or whatever? Or are they who is this person? Is my wife? Is my son? Is my, what? They have intentions that are the best. They're trying to build me up. They're trying to help me. So why would you be mad if someone is genuinely trying to help you get better? You might be annoyed or disagree, but why are you mad? What's really going on? And I've been trying to work through that, like just whatever it is. Like, I'm dating a girl who she worries about me, not right now, one of my exes, but driving home, because she lived far away. It's like over an hour drive back. She'd always want me to let her know right away when I got home. I'm like, you feel all controlling, like, you know what I mean? But in actuality, she's just afraid. She just wanted to know that I made home safe. Like, why is that such a bad thing? Why is it such a problem? And all those little things contribute and add up a lot. Because, okay, well, I get annoyed. I don't text her. The next day, she's irritated. Then I'm irritated. She's irritated. And it's like, it's not a huge deal. But then you have a bunch of stuff like that. You're carrying around all this stuff. And it might not just be with her. It might be with your friends, your family, your coworkers, whatever. Taking things personally is just like a very hard way to live.
It is.
And again, this goes back to intention. It was probably just ignorance. It was probably not intentional that they were trying to screw you up or whatever,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And sometimes, but if you just let it go. And again, I'm not saying I'm good at that, but that's like something God's been kind of revealing to me lately. The world does not revolve around me. Things do not have to go my way. The only thing I deserve is hell. Anything else is icing on the cake. And if you can and my mom told me that because someone told her that. And it's true. If you can internalize that, life's pretty sweet.
That's facts.
You know,
That's facts.
people don't like to hear that, but it's true.
Thomas, I know we have to get obviously to our next event, but this has been honestly such a pleasure, such an honorable thing to be able to talk to you and just hear your story and your things that you're into and what has gotten you to today. And I want to be clear to people listening, like we always preach it, like coming to Jesus and following God does not fix your problems.
No.
But I think is the one thing that when you focus on that, he then works in, like you said earlier, you fix your mind on him and he fixes your heart in return. And we encourage everyone, if you're not a believer, obviously, you know, this is the way. Like this is the way to live. We have 3 men here that have gone through many experiences that if you tell them, can you go back 10 years? What would your first thing that you would do? I say I would accept Jesus as my Christ Savior, and I would follow him.
Yeah, actually live it.
I would live it 100%. You know, but we're so grateful to have you, man, and have your dad together and be able to publish these 2 episodes for people to get to know you more. And I know for a fact that this will not be the last time that I'll see you.
No,
I will definitely be visiting Hawaii.
Yeah, you guys, anytime, come out, man, for real.
We got to make that trip now because you got Pastor Tom's coming this way a lot.
Yeah.
Now, so I'm trying to go over that way.
So you guys can do the long flight next.
Hey, I'm planning on going back to Cali hopefully in a year, so I'll be, you know, a couple hours away. And that's the first trip we're taking with my new baby girl when she's a year or 2, because that's what we did with our son. So
that's nice.
We're gonna do that. But I'm just super grateful, man, and super thankful for you. Can't wait to listen to you tomorrow. I'll love to give you also. I'll let you finish, and then if you want to give kind of your socials and your music, your stuff for sure.
No, just to echo what Jose said, man. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, bro.
Thank you for your honesty, your vulnerability, and all that. And it's. Like we showed your dad, like if it just hits one person, right, then we've done our job, and it's just a blessing. And honestly, just sitting here listening to you, it's giving me something to even think about in my own personal life. So thank you personally, because it's a struggle that I've been having for a while, some things just pondering, and just listening to you today has really made some things more clear for myself in my own life. So thank you for that.
Bro, thank you. I mean, that alone makes it all worth it, bro. Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, for sure.
My pleasure, gentlemen. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a blessing and a privilege. And honestly, like it's like changing what I may have to talk more about this for my message tomorrow. Like,
let's do it.
Yeah, some heavy stuff, but some important stuff.
Amen.
So thank you for what you guys are doing, because men's mental health is not not really talked about enough, and this is the kind of conversation we're gonna have.
Yeah, I agree.
What are where can people follow your stuff? Yeah,
you can. Follow me on all social media, Instagram, TikTok, whatever, at Thomas Iannucci, ThomasIannucci, super Italian. And on Twitter, it's Thomas Iannucci _ because the guy beat me to it.
Oh, man.
One other guy, I don't know,
It's another Thomas Iannucci.
Yeah, never used it. Man, I don't know. And then, I post about my writing and my music and that kind of stuff. I'm on Spotify, Apple Music, all under Thomas Iannucci. And ThomasIannucci.com. I got to start promoting my website a little more. And I should mention that the next big event I got going on will be May 1st. I have this writing collective sort of thing that I am a part of called the Kauai Writers Garden on Kauai, and we'll be partnering with the National Book Foundation, which is like the most prestigious literary organization in America. And we're going to be bringing in Ingrid Rojas Contreras, and she's going to be doing a talk and promoting free books. She's a Pulitzer finalist and an MBA finalist. This is huge for us. This little island on Kauai is huge. So
that's awesome.
Shout out to
Congratulations.
Ingrid and the MBA. We're very excited. Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Awesome. Thank you. Can you do us the honors of giving us a good prayer on the way out?
Absolutely, man. It would be my, as they say in Japanese, mochiron. Thank you, Jesus, so much for allowing me to be here with my brothers today. It is just such an honor, a privilege, and a pleasure to be here, following in the footsteps of my dad. Excuse me. Following in the footsteps of my dad, getting to share space and kind of talk about these really, really, really crucial issues, that I think all men struggle with, and we're too ashamed or too whatever it is to talk about it. So getting the ability to do that is truly an honor. God bless these gentlemen as they continue to represent you, Lord, going forward with this podcast. I think they're really, really, really doing God's work, giving people an opportunity, especially men, to kind of hear and unpack and grow in faith, in life, and maybe even the women who love them to understand a little bit more about how the men in their lives kind of function and operate. And also bless LJ when he becomes a pastor, in Jesus' name.
Oh, man. Thanks for joining us on The Honest Pursuit. If you got something out of this episode, share it with a friend and keep the conversation going. You can find more at honestpursuitpodcast.com. Until next time, keep pursuing truth, growth, and grace.